We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180. Our in-studio guest, one of the good people up in Sacramento, our own state senator, Gene Fuller.
They're all good people. Some are just misguided.
Misguided. I like that. Kind
Yes.
of like, yeah, well, so one of the few unmisguided people. How about that?
There you go. Most of the people up there think that our money is their money,
Well, and they're doing us a favor when they give us the money back.
if they let us keep it.
Yeah, assuming they let us keep it. Yeah, okay.
But I thank Jean for being up there to support us and fight for us.
Yes, and it's a
She
lonely
and
fight.
her associate Shannon over on the assembly side do a great job.
And unfortunately, it's getting lonelier up there for them.
Yes.
So you should run for office, Clay.
Well, I'd have to find anybody to vote for me other than you. And even that's questionable.
I was going to say, how much money do you have in your pocket? So, Gene, but in spite of this, I don't want to call it a den of inequity up there, but you have had some successes lately, and we actually sat through one of your successes. Tell us about that.
Yes, well, the success you set through was on consent item, which is very rare for Republicans, but I was able to get a bill through that helped our Tulare Hospital District. Currently, they have no way to get reimbursement because of a lack of a city or county stepping forward. It's not like Kern County and Tulare County. They have not stepped forward to do this low health impact program that allows the hospital to be reimbursed. So that sort of makes all the local taxpayers who are working with that hospital have to pay. Mm-hmm. And we were able to get a waiver so that they will now be able to get reimbursed for those mandated public health care costs. Mm-hmm. And it's all federal money that's going to them, so we're quite excited.
Speaking of health care for a moment, what's going to happen, I guess, and this is more Clay's venue than mine, but talking about health care, California is going to go ahead and go along with what the federal government would have under Obamacare in any case, right?
Every day there's a new attempt to try to put forth more criteria that would be moving ahead with the Obama health care issues, even though those are in court now, and we're hoping that they don't come forward.
So we could theoretically, win in the Supreme Court 5-4, which is probably how it'll come down, and lose in Sacramento.
Well, Sacramento is very intent upon that, yes, and so then there would probably either have to be a second suit based on the win in the federal courts. But I think the main issue is that why is it that California always has to go ahead and make another law that probably won't align with the first law before they have any concrete information, and especially when it's under suit.
Ninth Circuit.
Yes.
How are they possibly going to afford to do this? They're already over $9 billion in the hole.
Wait, Clay, let's talk about they believe that your wallet is their wallet. They believe that your wallet is infinitely being refilled and will continue to be refilled under any circumstances. So at this point, they're not debating the cost. They're debating moving the bill forward and what policy they particularly want so that their special interests will be all lined up ready to go at the time the money does or does not come down. Mm-hmm. That's only of secondary interest to them.
And that's along with high-speed rail that they're going to put in place, too.
High-speed rail is the same way. It's on hold because now the price tag has totally eclipsed what the public voted for.
Surprise, surprise.
I know, that's very surprising. And, of course, there was a promise that the private industry was going to also invest. But when that doesn't happen, they tend to say, well, don't worry about that. That part will come later. But it never does come later.
Another surprise.
Yes.
I want you to explain something. You mentioned that your bill was passed on a consent item. Mm-hmm. Let's look at the procedure for a second. A lot of people don't know what a consent item is. So can you explain how that works?
It is that when it came out of committee that all members of the committee, both parties in this case, Republican and Democrat, voted for it, and that there was no opposition by anyone on the floor, the Senate floor, against that bill so that it could be put on consent.
And then several bills go along on the consent.
Yes, and the consent bill, there were, I don't remember that day, but at least 25 or 30 consent bills, yes.
One vote, everything's yes or everything's no.
Yes.
Then 99.99% of the time it's yes.
Yes, but anyone on the floor, if they look at that list and they see any bill they don't like or their party said that it would be okay for them, they can still raise their hand and pull that bill off and vote separately.
Another bill, Marty, you want to talk about?
Well, there was a bill, your care bill, was a good
Yes. As vice chair of the Senate Energy Committee, I wanted to do something that would help control energy rates in our area. And it came to my attention that because of the way the CARE California, which is the CARE Alternate Rates for Energy Utility Rate program for low-income household is set up, that there's a self-verification process and really no way for the utilities to accurately verify eligibility. In other words, if you say that you make less than the poverty line and you sign up, that's it. Nobody can do anything about it. It just rides. And of course, who subsidizes those bills? But all of us who are honest when we sign up for our electrical rates. So there was also, sort of adding injury to insult, when I researched it, I found out there wasn't any incentive to conserve in that program. So if you sign up as a low-income individual, if your rate was, like you left all your air conditionings run 24 hours a day, there was no rate like all the rest of us get, that it continues to ratchet up per unit.
Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3.
Yeah, no Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4. So I have introduced legislation, SB 1207, that would give the utilities the ability to verify whether what that person says is true, whether they actually have that income or not. And if they don't have that income, then they would have to pay back the rates for the last 2 years that they basically cheated you and I out of. And if they have a 400% usage, which is huge, but if they have a 400% usage, then they are subject to, even if they are low income, mandatory conservation programs and tools that they would have to revise in their house to make their energy rate lower. And that, again, saves all of us.
So what happens is you go back and try to get the money back from them, and they had no money in the first place. So they're going to have to get the money from one of our public entities to pay back a public entity.
Well, in this case, these are people who are frauding. In other words, they have more money than they said they did. They actually would not have qualified for care. They're making more money than the poverty level money. They're making more than $29,000.
That's probably half the people on the entitlements.
Yeah. Well, we went down and we found there's 12,000 people, Clay, that fall into either this category of too high of usage or possible fraud areas.
Our in-studio guest, Senator Jean Fuller.
Well, I went ahead and put solar on my house. It's one of the greatest things I ever did, but I certainly would like to see some more tax credits. I'm doing my part.
There's a couple great straight lines there, but I'm going to behave.
Another industry that's doing their part is the trucking industry. But, we've been putting so many regulations on the trucking industry lately that they're barely able to operate. And here was the latest one that I have a bill that because most of my bills are rollback regulatory issues that we don't need.
I love that.
And we found out that the California Air Resources Board, CARB, as part of their implementation of AB 32, has required all trucks in the state to install trailer skirts to help with fuel efficiency. The problem is that this is, again, a one-size-fits-all, that trailer skirts do not save fuel efficiency unless you're running an average of 62 miles per hour. So all the little trucks in our area that are running back and forth to the grocery store and stuff like that, they're having to put these skirts on at great expense, and they're not getting any fuel efficiency from them at all.
You talking about little pickup trucks too?
All commercial trucks, that are like hauling your groceries or hauling our oil or things like that. So we're trying to roll it back so that if it's a local or urban truck that does not do long hauls, that they do not have to put these skirts on.
CARB is another organization that needs to go away.
Yes, it would be nice if we could change CARB. But we're now down to the place where we're testify. I go down and testify on a regular basis. I work with the director, who was also approved through rules, to try to get some relief for our guys in my Koerner, Tulare, Inyo, and San Bernardino counties.
Now, always one of the big issues for us is water. What's going on with the water bond?
Well, the water bond basically is now pulling very low. It's been raining. People have more water, even though we don't have enough. And what that bill is about is storage. If you capture water in excess years and save it until you need it, then you actually have more for the drought. But I think we're probably going to have to try to move it to 2014 because it's polling very poorly. And the governor does not want anything to compete with his two tax initiatives, so he's not helping with it, even though he has been helping with water. So all of the water caucus guys are talking about whether it will be on 2012 or 2014.
You know, the other thing he did, speaking of the governor and speaking of initiatives, I mean, to me, was just absolute raw power. Was our next guest is going to talk about the stop special interest money. Well, that was supposed to be on the ballot in June, but all of a sudden it now, for some strange reason, ends up on the November ballot. So there's only 2 ballots on this coming up next month, right? Those were ballots that qualified before Governor Brown all of a sudden removed everything to November.
That's correct. There was a law that changed. They got through the legislature that moved everything to November because they felt their initiatives would have a better chance in November. So the only 2 that are still on there are Prop 28, the legislative term limits, and the Prop 29, the California Cancer Research.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask Gene a question, personal question, about term limits. Are you pro or con with term limits?
You know, I am pro term limits, and obviously I wouldn't have come if it wasn't for term limits, but I am thinking that it would be a little better if we had longer time in either house, same term limits or less, but you could the average time in the assembly in the last couple of years is like 4 years, and frankly, having been there, it takes 4 or 5 years to learn it. So while term limits is good, you get more people in. We shouldn't make people have to go from one to the other. We should be able to let them serve it all out in one house or the other. But same limits or less.
Right, which is basically what Prop 28 is for.
Yes.
Okay, basically says. Gene, we're running out of time, unfortunately, and I just wanted to publicly thank you for what you do, and I wish there were more people like you up there.
Thank you. You should come more often. I think we terrorized Sacramento while you were there, and certainly we'll be looking forward to the next time when you can follow me around for a day.
Great.
Thank
you.
We'll be back in a minute on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.